Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Joy. I'm the Youth and Education Coordinator for Strong-Hearted Native Women's Coalition. And today we have Dean Hoaglin speaking on working with Native men and boys. So we'd like to welcome you all to week 6. I see that it says week 5 in the chat. It's week 6. So this is our final week. And we thank all of you guys for joining us throughout. I'm going to introduce Dean. He is a descendant of the Hukukio Band of Coast Miwok Indians of Marin County and the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians of Lake County on his maternal side, and the Walaiki and Yuki Indians of the Round Valley Indian Reservation in Mendocino County on his paternal side. He was born and raised in Santa Rosa, California, all the while being exposed to traditional teachings and practices from family and extended family elders. Mr. Hoaglin has over 25 plus years in social service work and Native American programs throughout the Bay Area, Sacramento, and his home territory of Marin, Sonoma, Lake, and Mendocino counties. His work has focused on AOD prevention and education, wellness, recovery, and healing from many forms of trauma, domestic violence advocacy, and direct services, and leadership development for youth and adults. Dean believes in the importance of utilizing culturally appropriate strength-based approaches in services delivery for the benefit of tribal peoples seeking positive lifestyle changes and overall improved health status. So just a quick housekeeping item. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. And if you, this is being recorded. If you would like, we can send a copy of the recording at a later date. So welcome, Dean, and thank you again.
Oh, thank you, Joy. It's great to be with everyone today. Appreciate the invite. I was looking forward to today and just sharing, a little perspective on, the work that I've been involved with, and it's like it's like an honor always and a privilege, to share that, with community members, with relatives, and anything to, again, strengthen, what's being done. That's kind of like why we do what we do, and so much is, direct service, education, prevention, how can we impact the lives of, our people. So thank you for, again, the invite.
Thank you.
So, what I wanted to talk about again was the work that we've been doing and that I've been involved with regards to our men and our Native boys, and I feel like, it's so important for us to, look at, the idea around recovery and healing for our Native men and boys, especially with, the challenges that we're faced with currently in our society. But even before we go there, like I shared, before we started, was this idea of, and the question that I would ask anyone is, who are you, why are you, and where are you going? Those are the questions, that we've been given to kind of like start the conversation as far as, what's going on in anyone's life, of our Native men and boys that we work with. So I believe that, we need to look at and know what our history is, kind of like, where did this start, and how do we get to this place where we're at now with all these, challenges that we're faced with around violence, around health disparities, around, again, the abuse, the trauma, those things that our communities, our tribal communities are faced with, again, and a lot of it is systemic. And without going into, like I said, with the whole, historical trauma, but we need to mention it, we need to acknowledge it, right? And so what I did is I tried to, again, kind of like take somewhat of that approach. So I'm going to share some ideals with you all and some information, and I hope that it is something that, brings some awareness for each one of you, that, you can hopefully have some aha moments, like, oh yeah, okay, I understand that, and so, what is my part? What is my role? Because we're all in this together. I believe that, and, it's kind of like that. There's that old saying, right? It takes a village, to heal, one of our relatives. So really keep that in mind, so I, I started with this first, idea around recovery and healing, and then there you see the photo of the native man with his infant son, and this picture just is so powerful, it's so powerful and beautiful, and what it speaks to me is that, as Native men, we have a specific and sacred role as fathers. Myself being a father, being a grandfather, being an uncle, I take those, really, honorably, and it is sacred, so I love this photo. So it's like, okay, I didn't have one I could share, but that one really stands out for me. So just want to share that much. So we can just kind of get into the PowerPoint and again, look at, some ideas around, again, how did we get to this point? And I don't know, this is a lot of information and a little print, okay? And just talks about kind of like some of the things that, we find that, our people, have been experiencing, around, maybe mental health, physical health challenges, unmet medical and psychological needs, those experiences, the suicide rates, of course, that we see and that we know about in our communities, and what's and really that's directly related to the work that I'm currently doing at Sonoma County Indian Health. It's I work for Skip, and I do the suicide prevention, what's called the Aunties and Uncles program. So it's really a tough kind of arena because of the way suicide is viewed, and with the stigma and kind of like that challenge, right? How do we address it? How do we talk about it? And so we all know that we have our average suicide rate is just astronomically you know than what the norm is for any other group of people, and suicide being the second leading cause of death. This is striking for Native Americans ages 10 through 34, right? Um, and then just kind of another, so a little bit more information about how how many tribes we have, that in the United States. And again, this idea around, there's so much diversity in our communities. Not one community is the same as far as what the challenges are, and those health disparities, but it's similar, right? And so we know that it's important to look at, again, the challenge of stereotypes, people have, towards, us as Native Indigenous people, like we all are the same, we all have, the same, resources or, challenges, but that's not true. We know that. And so, we're being challenged by those issues around, poverty, low education, and really what strikes me in this um, slide here is just that what really hurts is the lowest life expectancy of any other population in the United States. So when I see that, what it tells me, and my response is that we have work to do, because our job, again, in addressing these challenges is to save lives, right? And so that's what we're charged with. That's what we want to move to, and how can we do that? And so again, we'll go to the next slide, and we'll talk about how do we get here? What is the history that we inherited, right? And again, these are some elements of the historical trauma. I'm sure some people have covered already. And what I put down was, again, the effects of colonialism, patriarchy. That sounds familiar. What's currently happening, right? That's a system in a society that was that we inherited. Multi-generational trauma, of course. We know that that's something that, again, we all are still dealing with because of repeated and systemic trauma that currently exists in our communities and in our governments. Loss of culture is a big one, and because culture to us is everything, and how it defines who we are as indigenous people, as Native people. Displacement, and one thing I didn't put down, but around displacement is kind of like this idea around being taken or being moved from our original home, or because we were in the way, right? We were in the way. And so along with displacement, I think that there also is this idea around disenfranchisement, you know. And so a lot of these relate to one another. Loss of identity, and again, that could be related to, again, that loss of culture and that displacement. Who are we? What is our purpose? What are our roles? And this is as Native men, right? Internalized oppression and lateral violence, and those are things that that are kind of like out of these experiences have developed, and we could go more into that, and I'm not sure if others have really explained that, but it's real, and it continues to this day. Poverty. A lot of times we don't talk a lot about poverty, and how, again, how it impacts our communities, because again, if we have poverty, how can we have adequate health care? How can we have adequate housing? How can we have just those things, food, right? Just basic living essentials that we need, that our families need, our children. So I want to share that much on, again, these are the things we inherited in colonialism, kind of like what we call, after contact, right? Wow. Yeah. So we'll go to the next slide. And again, like Joy said, if there's any questions, feel free, but again, I wanted to be specific, and around this idea around European societies. I thought, a lot of times we don't see that. What does that look like? Because it's important to look at, what was brought here with colonization, with colonialism. And European societies were thoroughly misogynistic. They devalued women. And I don't know how many people know or studied history, and Europeans, they look down upon women, and like I said, devalued them. And it's reflective in, if you look at Europe's history, with the whole like idea around with the witch hunt, right? And just how women were viewed, and so that is something that again, that is transferred into like our current society, as far as that misogynistic view, and how it's been carried over. A patriarchal society is dysfunctional and based on domination and violence. And so, that's the reality. Again, we see it in all facets of our society, especially with leadership. I'm talking about, the people that actually really run this country, this government, and it's pretty crazy. It's pretty scary. How do we make that change, right? These dysfunctional systems that are currently in place here in the United States is maintained through systemic denial. Like, oh yeah, we're just doing this. Yeah, and like it's just like the norm, right? It's always been this way, you know. And when do we hold, our government and these leaders accountable? And it is tied into, and it's related to white male privilege. I mean, some people say, oh, it's male privilege, but let's be honest. It started with white male privilege. When we talk about, I mean, what I didn't include on here was, again, when you look at, kind of like that document, the founding fathers created, Declaration of Independence, and it has that statement about we the people. We did not include us indigenous people. We're referred to, and I don't even want to go into like how we referred to, right? But that was the perception, and again to continue with that idea around white privilege, right, and oppression. So if we can go to the next slide. So again, getting into those other historical sources of trauma. Again, colonization. It's like, dang it, why didn't we do something, right, to stop them from coming here? Right? Colonization has been, just so traumatic for our people from the beginning until up to today. Because included in that colonization was that what we refer to as a genocidal process, right? Genocidal process was, again, based on this, along with the doctrine of discovery that, we as indigenous people were here for the taking. We didn't, we weren't validated, as caretakers of our own land, right? And so you see where these things happen with the removal and relocation of tribal people from our ancestral lands, right? And that was really, that's a tough one, because we, as indigenous people, we have such a strong connection to those places from which we come from. And so you talk about trauma, and again, where our ancestors are buried, how do we keep those, those connections? How do we honor them? And so that's a really tough one. And of course, in California, we had the gold rush period, where there was, again, a lot of killings, a lot of murdering of our women and children. It wasn't just our men, but it was our women and children too. And then the mission experience here in California, which basically was slave labor, but there was a lot of, again, enslavement, loss of life, right? And that includes our children. And then the boarding school experience, and what you have is, again, why was boarding schools created? Again, the intention was to break down, again, the family system, our families, right? The taking of our children, which, it was intentional. And it was a part of that genocidal process. So, and the boarding school, of course, it was based on, a military form of, organizing, And so assimilation is another one that, again, has impacted us, and how it's impacted us, how it's affected us men, is because, again, it's like being told that, and for our own good, that we needed to be non-natives. We needed to be somebody we were not, and it's heartbreaking to look at that, because in the name of saving us, saving our souls, right? there was this falsehood that, you know, it was in our best interest that we assimilate. But I think a lot of the history of our people is, you know, just survival. And that's kind of like how, you know, we were forced to assimilate, and it was out of survival that we kind of like did what we had to do, you know, for our families, right? So this is the tough stuff right here. This is the tough stuff. And I want to set that foundation as far as kind of like, you know, why, you know, what we inherited, you know, why we're still, you know, trying to overcome, you know, this trauma. Okay, next slide. And these are just some examples, you know, out of that trauma, you know, that experience, examples of dysfunctional behavior, and, you know, kind of like, you know, what's, you know, not normal, right? If you're put, you know, if you experience certain types of trauma, you know, what is the outcome? And this first one is really interesting because of, you know, again, when we're talking about, you know, our Native men and you know, the challenge of them, you know, healing, and then being a part of, again, of you know, this violence, right? This idea around violence against, again, our communities, our women, our children, our lands, you know. And so we have to recognize, again, the kind of like the wheres and the hows of, you know, kind of what was the recipe for us to act out that way, right? And so if you can keep going, there we go. So again, lack of parenting skills resulting in abuse and neglect. You know, if parents weren't able to, you know, or if they experience trauma, they experience shame, hurt, you know, and you know, they as children, and then they go back to their communities. What is their, you know, what is their skill level? What is their, I guess, mode of, you know, how they parent, right? Not knowing, you know. And I shared a personal story, you know, because it hits home when I see this, because you know, years ago, when I decided to get on this good life path, you know, first person I saw was my father, and I went to my dad, you know, and I went to embrace him, and I was so excited, you know. It's like, you know, I'm on this spiritual path, you know, I wanted to share that with him, and I went to hug my dad, you know, he just stood there, you know, he didn't know how to respond, like, you know, kind of like emotionally, you know. It was like, whoa. And what I didn't know that is my father, he didn't learn how to nurture, how to be loving, because of the experience of his father, my grandfather, at boarding school, because it was taken out of him. It was taken. And so I guess that's a level of neglect, right? Not learning that, you know. Oh, it may be my child, but, you know, I don't know how. I don't know how to love. I don't know how to nurture. I don't know how to show them that emotional connection. And so I just wanted to share that. That's what that looks like. Failure to recognize applied traditional practices, of course, because we all know that experience at, like, at boarding school was, you know, to, again, to, you know, beat out the Indian and all of us and all our ancestors, our elders experienced that, right? And so there was this disruption in our connection to our traditional practices and values. So that's why there was this experience. Generational breakdown of transference of traditional practices and cultural values. Somewhat similar, but what it's speaking to is like the continuum. Once this disruption, you know, this impact of all this trauma from first contact, you know, there begins that generational breakdown, right? Because if somebody's told, you know, not to do something, if they're shown that, or if it's completely, they're taken away, then who picks that up? Who carries on those teachings, those practices, those cultural values, right? So that's what that speaks to. And of course, how do they cope? Abuse of alcohol and drugs, right? I didn't list it as far as some of the impacts or some of those things that we inherited, but alcoholism is one. If you can go back, okay, if we don't have a question, you can go to the next one. So, thank you. Another thing I think we need to look at is this idea around adverse childhood trauma. Again, I mean, I don't want to say it's relatively easy to acknowledge that this is what most of our men and even children experience, or young men. But this is really powerful. This is really important to look at, those experiences in childhood. And as it says, numerous research studies have shown how childhood stress and trauma can impact adult health, right? The ACE study is the largest study investigating the health and social effects of negative childhood experiences. Now that we have the research, what can we do about it? The cycle of violence, generational poverty and abuse, homelessness, substance abuse, incarceration, perpetration, and victimization of violence are all related to ACEs. Wow. But what if this is my story? Helping survivors of childhood trauma understand the impact that ACE may have on their health and well-being is step one. Acknowledging the barriers and times when a survivor feels stuck is step two. Creating tools and self-care strategies, lifelong journey to hope, health, and happiness. You are not your ACE score. It is not a diagnosis. And to me, what this speaks to again is that it gives us, kind of a starting point. It gives us something to work with, to show us. Because for each man that we work with, each young man that we work with, they have their own story. And so this helps us, we're looking at what is that story? Like, not what's wrong with you, but what happened. Let's share your story. Let's talk about that, right? And that's where we begin. Again, so important that we have this tool, but at the same time we have work, to do once we go through this process. So I guess you could say that's where we come in, right? The workers, the providers, the helpers, and again, this can be anybody that is going to do this work, anybody that has, interest, anybody that has compassion, anybody that has, the willingness to just, share their time with any Native man, any young man, a boy, right? So, I feel like this is really important to look at as we move forward. And so if we can go to the next one. And just I guess I'm one of those like quote guys, right? I'm one of those quote guys. If you can go back to that, because it kind of speaks to this, Oh, you're doing great. Thank you, Joy. I found this, it's like it just really speaks to this. It's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. And so that's when Frederick Douglass said this, when was that? But yet it's so powerful because that's the work we have at hand, because we have so many broken men, right? And there's such a need for our young boys to see other men that are willing to, again, to help them, right? So we got kind of like our job is kind of twofold, right? And so that's why it's really, really important, that we, again, take that time and invest in, you know, I believe that each and every one of our Native men that have experienced trauma, right? I believe that, and at any one point, and myself being an example, that we can make that change. We can make that change. But it's going to take, again, someone that, shows them, somebody that affirms them, somebody that cares about them, right? And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. But powerful though. Thank you. So this is actually these are the actually what they call the ACEs questions. When we do, I don't know, I want to like everybody raise their hand that did the ACEs, right? I can see you all. So adverse childhood experiences, questions. Did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? Wow. That right there, you talk about trauma, you talk about how would that feel for any one child? You talk about mental, emotional abuse. Did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or even hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Yeah, there's that physical abuse, right? That leaves an emotional scar. Did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you or have your touch your body in a sexual way or attempt or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you? There's that sexual abuse that so many of our children, men and girls, experience. Did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special? Or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? That one, again, it's like, and we just discussed this yesterday in our program in Argona yesterday. There's such a need for us as Indian people to belong, to feel that we're in a safe place. And as a child, and that's as a child, we need to have that safety. And this is just, this is definitely something where that's not the experience, right? Living in fear, that's trauma. Did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you? Or your parents were too drunk or too high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? So again, there's kind of like that neglect, right? Like I said, some of these overlap as far as the type of abuse. So that is neglect. And again, it's a mental and even emotional abuse. So if we can go to the next one, next slide. Were your parents ever, okay, that, yeah, if you can go back, okay. I just want to, so were your parents are ever separated or divorced? Again, what does that create? What kind of trauma is that for a child? That uncertainty, like And a lot of times what happens with children, what they'll do is they'll blame themselves, right? What's wrong? Why are my parents doing this? You know, it's because of me. And so that affects their self-worth. And so they carry that into adulthood, right? I'm not worthy. Very powerful. Was your mother or stepmother often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her? Or sometimes often or very often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard? Or ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or knife? What does that do? What does that do for young boys? Does that say it's okay that I don't value women? I don't have to respect them? How does that impact them, their thinking psychologically? Very powerful. Did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or who used street drugs? Again, there's that, again, mental abuse, trauma. Like, that's not normal. I guess that's how, that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what's being modeled for me. Like we've said, the kind of like the unnormal becomes the norm when we see that over and over again. Was a household member depressed or mentally ill? Or did a household member attempt suicide? Yeah. So again, not knowing what that is, what my part is, how could I have prevented that? Is that going to happen to me? Those are the things that young people go through that creates anxiety into adulthood. And the last one is, did a household member go to prison? Yeah. And so that right there, again, it could be related to whether it was a father, somebody in that role. Again, abandonment, right? That issue, or like that's just a norm, that becomes that's what's going to happen to me, you know. Um, so I think at this time, if we can show the video clip, is there no questions? If there's any questions, if we can show that video clip, Joy. Perform your magic, and then we'll come back to.
About magic, it's going to take me just a second to change
Okay.
screens here. So I just need to stop sharing this one so I can get out of it.
Back up. Drink water.
There we go. And then almost there, guys.
Alrighty.
Okay, I'm here on the, yeah, I was on the video. Hold on.
Yeah.
Here we go. Maybe not. Click. Okay, can everybody hear that?
Raise your hand if you can hear it.
Can you hear it, Dean? Okay, we got
Yeah.
a hand up. We're good, thank you.
Step inside the circle. Step inside the circle.
There is no shame.
I'm so good. Good to see you. How are you? Amen.
Well,
Oh, well, good to see you. Welcome. I was abused as a young girl. I was beaten by my mother. I was verbally abused by my mother. I was sexually abused by another man. My father was an alcoholic. My mother was a rageaholic. I've driven drunk. I've sold drugs. I was a juvenile delinquent. Probably my story is similar to most of your stories in here. I'm white and I'm female and nothing happened to me. So, I got a get out of jail free card. And so I'm here now because I see myself in every one of you.
I'm a traumatized child, raised by a traumatized child. My mother was traumatized as well as her parents.
Like he said, we wasn't born in the world of being evil people. My mother didn't want me. She hid her pregnancy. She tried to flush me down the toilet. But as I learned about these things, I always asked myself what was wrong with me.
When I come to the circle and I see everybody else and she's reading up the questions and people stepping in further, I look at my childhood and I'm like, a lot of these people in this yard are just like me.
there was one step I should have taken that I didn't take, and I saw some of my brothers and my friends take that step. I felt like such a coward. I wasn't brave enough to be there with them when they took that step. And every round after that, I took the most difficult step.
Our traumas kept us separated. We were all on a circumference, all standing apart. But once we begin to acknowledge our traumas publicly, it brought us all closer together.
In prison, you're not supposed to show your weaknesses in prison. But to want to do that, to walk in that circle like that, and to take each step forward was a reminder to ourselves that we still have humanity and we worthy to be loved. Most people on the outside don't understand that we want to change so we can re-enter society better than what we left it. And I think one of the things that when you was yelling at no shame and you had us yelling it out, it was freeing us too. And it was a point to where when I was looking at that and we was all looking at it in a circle, you could hear that echo, no shame. And that was very powerful, especially coming from a little lady like you.
I'm 76 years old. I've seen a lot. I don't like talking. I like to meet people that understand what's happening without words. And you one of them. Today has been one of the best days I had in my whole entire life since I've been out here these 40 years.
Your true spirits are not violent. Your true spirits are magnificent.
Hi, my name is Fritzi Horseman, founder of the Compassion Prison Project. Thank you so much for watching our promo for Step Inside the Circle. We're asking for donations so that we can continue our urgent and important work, educating the public about the devastating effects of childhood trauma and bringing this awareness to the men, women, and children living in prison. Our mission is to transform prisons into places that focus on education, mental health, and rehabilitation. Your donations will help us advocate for trauma-informed care, community support, and a shift in the paradigm in how we incarcerate, isolate, and dehumanize the most traumatized members of our society. Thank you again for watching.
All right. Thank you, Joy.
Of course. Of course, of course. Now we're going
So,
to
I just want to again, process that just a little bit. Again, that was related to again what I was sharing around, again, the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and some of the testimony that those men that are incarcerated had were very, very powerful. One gentleman talked about, restoring his humanity, that he was valued, that, that he is, able to love, and they're working on being better human beings. So it's very powerful. We do something similar to that, step inside the circle, or what we call a cultural walk, and we'll name out those things, like, that you experience. And it's just, again, to acknowledge, whatever that trauma is, that hurt, or something you're still working on, because that's the first step in acknowledgement. And then we can, once we identify it, we can begin that work on the healing part. So I thought that was really, really powerful. Again, it's very telling, because how many of our Native men, and that have experienced, incarceration, and when you can look at it where it's because of the, a lot of times it's because of those childhood experiences, not knowing, again, kind of the whys, and, why I did whatever I did, to put me in this place, right? Whether it was, again, the thinking and the choices, but as noted, that adversity that, we experience in childhood impacts our health and our development, as human beings. And we have that unresolved trauma, so we need to understand that trauma, and that way we can look at, how is it still impacting us, currently. So that's really vital to, when we talk about recovery and healing for our Native men. And so I don't know if there's any questions at this point.
Not at this point.
Okay, so we can.
Okay.
So I want to we're going to shift gears a little bit, in this presentation, because I think, again, like I said from the start, it's like we need to find out, kind of like, where we were, and to acknowledge that, where we're at now. How did we get here, and where are we now, and where do we want to move towards? How do we want to do that? So as Native men, I think it's important for us to, again, reclaim, kind of like what our roles were traditionally, and, what the Creator, why the Creator put us here. What were those instructions? And again, it's just a process that we have to look at, and acknowledge. So when we talk about, men reclaiming their roles, what are those? Fathers, we start with that fatherhood, right? And I mentioned it, how, that is honorable, that's sacred, along with fathers, we have the other specific roles, that go along with it. It's not just that, but again, we are providers, we are protectors, we are teachers, we are nurturers. That's what a lot of people, it's like when I say that, it's like nurturers. Yeah. Us men, we have the capacity to nurture. Because like my good friend, my fellow Homo sapien, brother Martin Martinez, likes to say, we're part woman. Hey, right? We come from a woman. So that, again, we have that capacity to nurture, and And as men too, we we have this thing called intuition. It's just that we weren't ever taught, how to, get in touch with that, how to utilize that, and mostly it's kind of associated with our women, right? They have that intuition, they're really connected to that. So, so I want to share that. So our men, we need to affirm those, our roles and our true purpose. Like I said, we need to come back to that, why we were put here, to stand in those roles, and to know that, that is the right place to be. And then we need to acknowledge, our life experience and lessons learned. Because through our lives, those experiences, how hard they were, whatever that trauma was, but still, there's lessons there. Like we say, some of the lessons are harder than others, right? It's like, darn it, why did I have to go through that? Okay. Maybe I'll learn from it, right? Maybe I won't have to go through it again if it was so hard. But all our experiences shows us, again, about who we are and how we can be, right? Those life experiences. Because I believe, and like an elder told me, we come here, we were put here to learn, to grow, to communicate, and to make relations. Those are the 4 things Uncle said. We'll come here to learn, to grow, to communicate, and make relations, right? So we have to be mindful of that. So we need to shift our thinking and beliefs that we are worthy, right? We need to affirm ourselves. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. It's kind of like that whole idea around, like, like we can't give away what we don't have, right? We can't love if we don't love ourselves. How many of you believe that? Raise your hands. Right? Yeah. So we have to definitely, we have to shift that thinking, right? And align that, that thought of, an acknowledgement, that I come from the Creator, and that's enough. He put me here, so I must be worthy, right? So, and we need to stand with our women and girls in the work of dismantling that misogyny, male privilege, and patriarchy within our communities. So that's our role too, to stand with our women. We need to give voice to these roles. And I know that there is hope, because I see a lot of men that are coming back into that, what we call that, that good life path, those circles of healing. Okay. So I don't know about today if we're going to cover it, but I could talk a little bit about, again, what are those things? What are those ways that we do that? So I was saving that for tomorrow, I think. Stay tuned until tomorrow. So we can go forward. And so as men, we need to change the societal norms to something that is positive, protective, and life affirming. Yeah. And the thing about it is our norms are associated with our values, right? And if we associate them with our values that are, that foundationally, something that's positive, something that, those ideas around, our traditional values around compassion, around understanding, around patience, around generosity, around love. If those norms are aligned with those values, then it is going to be positive. It is going to be protective. It is going to be life affirming. And I love this photo. I don't know if y'all can see it. I love this. I just found this. I was swimming on the internet or whatever, searching on the internet, and I found this photo with this, and it's just so awesome. I love it. It's Native boys are brilliant. Native boys are talented. Native boys are trustworthy. Native boys are intelligent. Native boys are cherished. Native boys are loved. Native boys are worthy of love and life. And that goes for us men. Native men are important. Native men are hardworking. Native men are generous. Native men are handsome. Whoop, whoop. Native men are appreciated. Native men are loved. Native men are worthy of love and life. Wow. So again, that is so, you know, we lost that. We lost that idea around how do we, you know, it starts with affirming ourselves, right? So every day, remind yourself, you know, you are worthy, right? And when somebody shares that with you, you know, you take it in and say, thank you, you know, thank you, right? And so that's what it's about. That change needs to happen, okay? And we have the capacity, we have the ability, we have everything, you know. We have that connection with our ancestors that can guide us to, you know, to not only think and move towards this way, but to live this way, right? And like we say, you know, like in the work that we do, you know, as far as, you know, in our lifestyle of being a traditional person, you know, we don't just, you know, again, we don't just talk about it or refer to it, but we live it. We live it based on those values. And but at the same time, we do that with humility. And we do it with, you know, the idea that we're there to learn too. We're there to share and we're there to learn. And so it's powerful when you kind of like open that door, open that space, you know, to share with other men. And then now we've expanded, you know, into the work we do with and including our young men, our boys in those circles, right? Because they need that. We need our men to be, again, those, you know, those carriers of these ways, you know, because our children, our sons, you know, our nephews, they're all watching. They've been watching, even when we think they haven't been. They're paying attention. So it can be so impactful. So that's what I love about the work that I'm able to, you know, to do with our men and you know, in our communities. And I see that transformation, you know, when they do have those aha moments. Now I understand, you know, that I don't have to carry this trauma. You know, I don't have to, you know, kind of continue to, you know, hit the wall, you know, and I don't have to, you know, again, be a victim because I'm a survivor, right? So I'll say about that much. How we doing? Did we lose anybody? Hey.
You're doing good. You've got about 30 minutes, 25.
Okay, no questions? Is everybody awake out there? Hey.
I'm hoping everyone's awake.
Yeah. All right. I hope you guys are, you know, some of this is making sense. Again, you know, I just kind of came up with this idea around, you know, kind of like what, you know, what men can do with boys, you know, and with their sons, again, you know, whether it's their, you know, their nephews or whomever, you know, that's in their village, in their circles, right? So here's some things that I felt was really, really good, really powerful, very, very positive, you know, giving some kind of like pointers, right, on how we guide our young boys. So the first one is listen, for us to listen as men. You know, hear what, you know, our sons have to say. Listen to how he and his friends talk about girls, right? And this is really important. You know, of course, you got to look at, you know, what's age appropriate, when they do start talking about girls, right? A lot of times it's maybe, pre-adolescence even, right? And so ask him if he's ever seen abusive behavior in his friends. Because what the idea around this and coaching our boys is to, look at, again, being nonviolent, right? And be aware of what that looks like. Has he ever seen abusive behavior in his friends? Is he worried about any of his friends who are being hurt in their relationship, or any of his friends hurting anyone else? So, it's up to us, as the men, as, the fathers, and uncles to listen to our boys. And then we have to tell them how, teach him ways to express his anger without using violence, right? When he gets mad, tell him he can walk it out, talk it out, or take a time out. And hopefully we all know how to do that, right? Yeah. I need to give myself a timeout, right? Let him know he can always come to you if he feels like things are getting out of hand. And see, that's so important. That's so important because, the most important thing we can do as parents, as, again, as adults, is to, and that's our most precious commodity, is to be there for our children, right? To give them that time, right? That's so important, just to be there. Let him know he can always come to you if he feels like things are getting out of hand. Try to give him examples of what you might say or do in situations that could turn violent, right? Yeah. Because it's kind of like, it's kind of like, what kind of, like, I guess, instructions can we offer? And as parents and as, again, as adults, we need to be able to, share that guidance, right? Kind of like, this is, how you respond, right? Like I said, maybe it's for themselves, again, walking it off, right? Talk it out, and just taking that time. Okay, next one. Bring it up. This is interesting, right? We got to bring it up, right? A kid will never approach you and ask for guidance on how to treat women. But that doesn't mean he doesn't need it. Try watching TV with him or listening to his music. If you see or hear things that depict violence against women, tell him what you think about it. So that part right there, to me, what that speaks to, again, is being open, being honest, and having a level of integrity, right? And setting the standard with, with what we know should be our values. And what's not included in that is violence is not something, that is a part of kind of like how we conduct ourselves, right? Never hesitate to let him know you don't approve of sports figures that demean women or jokes, video games, and song lyrics that do the same, right? So we need to, again, bring it up, right? And when it comes time for dating, be sure he knows that treating girls with respect is important, right? Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think it goes back to, again, what are those values? Like, what were we taught? And as how do we see our women? What, do we see them in a sacred manner, as we should? Those are, again, our wives, our spouses, our mothers, our grandmas, our sisters, our daughters, our nieces, our granddaughter, right? So it's really important that our sons know that, right? Teach often. Your job isn't done once you get the first talk out of the way, right? Oh yeah, I'm done with that. You know, we had to talk. Oh, I'm out of here. You're on your own, right? No, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. What is that old saying? Practice makes no, it doesn't make perfect. Practice makes improvement, right? So it's kind of like you just kind of continue until it's like it becomes not just a thought, but a behavior, an action that your son is, again, he knows it. He's walking that way. He's living that way of respect, right? Help him work through problems in relationships as they arise. Let him know that he can come back and talk to you again at any time, right? So important. Because then when you do that, what happens is he has confidence in you. And it builds his own confidence, right? I can count on my dad. Wow, how powerful is that, right? Other than like a lot of times what happens, unfortunately, is he doesn't care, right? My dad's never around. What's wrong with me, right? This is why this is so important. Use every opportunity to reinforce the message that violence has no place in a relationship. Reinforce is the key there, right? Every opportunity that you get. Okay, next. Be a role model, of course. Of course we want to be a role model, right? Okay, how many men out there don't want to be a role model for their sons? I'm glad I don't see any hands raised. Right? Wow, what a great opportunity, right? Man, I mean, you could be role models for like other youth, other children, but to be a role model for your own son, right? How wonderful is that? But being a role model as a Native man too, you could be, again, you could be in one of those other roles as a coach or any man, a healthy Native man who spends time with boys or teens will have the greatest impact when they walk the walk. So that's what that speaks to, again, is like, I can't say, oh yeah, son, you got to be respectful, to women, and yet here I am over there yelling at mom, right? No, that doesn't work that way, right? So it's kind of like what we say, is that what we're walking? Does our talk match our walk, right? They will learn what respect means by observing how you treat other people, right? What's interesting about this is that, because it was really about how we view and how we treat our women, right? And how, we're trying to teach our boys, and our young men how to be honorable and respectful of women. But in this instance, when it says observing how you treat other people, it has like another level of, I guess, a power to it, because it shows the fullness of what your intentions are, and that I want to be like that. Because regardless of what we do or what we did with our sons, guess what? We're always going to be, their role models, their heroes. I mean, like, my dad, he wasn't always around. He wasn't always there to guide me. But, and then I was kind of like had a resentment, but guess what? It didn't matter. I was still like, he's my hero, right? It was like, it's funny just how that works, But so important. Again, that we show up, that we, be consistent, and that we walk the walk, walk our talk. So make respect a permanent way of dealing with people. When you're driving in traffic, wait, did I put that in there? I don't know, that's a challenging one. Okay. Road rage? No, I never went to class for that. So yeah, yeah, some of these probably are challenging, right? Like, what are you talking about? Talking with customer service reps in restaurants, with waiters, and with your family around the dinner table. So it's kind of like, fool, kind of like, how do you treat people in all, I guess, areas of society, right? Whether you're, again, with your family, with your extended family, with community, or, in like again, as a consumer, right? Doing business, how are you treating those people, right? But, again, the challenge is because we never know like how others are going to treat us, right? Like, dang, why did I have to get the most challenging waiter or waitress? I'll be nice, right? But I think really it's about, again, to me, and what I share is that it's about kind of like what we put out there, right? What we put out in the universe, guess what? It's going to come back to us, right? How many of us believe that? Yeah. What's that called? I think it's called karma. Yeah. Yeah. So, we have to be, again, thoughtful. We have to be intentional with, with that way that we treat others, and I think in like maybe you have your like specific circles too of friends, and so and you all like treat each other a certain way too. You kind of tease, and as Indian people too, we tease each other, but I think it's because, and there's a saying like, if a native person doesn't tease you, then they don't, there's something wrong. Isn't that funny? It's like, so I guess if we're teasing you, then we care about you, right? Anyway, getting back to, got a little off track there. He's watching what you say and do and takes his cues from you, both good and bad. Yep, let us testify, right? Right? So make sure it's good. Yeah, yeah. I almost was willing to share experience I had about that, but I want. We live and we learn, but we wanted to do our best, right? Because like I said, I mean, we may not think that they're watching us, but they are, right? We think, oh, okay, yeah, I can kind of not be on my best, but they're watching. Be aware of how you express your anger. Wow. Because again, anger is an emotion, right? Right? And we all have it. And always, and I ask people, it's like, how does anger serve you? Do we, what do we do with it? So that's kind of like the response, what do we do with our anger? And how do we, kind of go through it, right? And it's our anger. And it doesn't mean that, okay, I want to share it with you guys, right? So it's important to really look at that, how you express that. Let them know how you define a healthy relationship, and always treat women and girls in a way that your son can admire, right? Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Yeah. And doesn't it make sense for you, for you men, for fathers that, man, I want to, I want to be admired by my son because of that, because I have, because that integrity, because I'm honorable, And it's not about how much money I got, but just that, again, that I'm a good person, you know. And I think really goes back to our values. Again, you know, being kind to ourselves and to one another, and to, you know, others that, you know, the Creator puts in our path and in our space, you know. So if you can do that as men, as fathers, man, you get like the gold star. All right. Yeah. So be a role model, be the most awesomest, I don't know if that's a real word, role model you can be. All right. Just want to encourage that. Okay. Next one, I think it was one more. Okay. So again, and this is what, you know, Coach, I wanted to bring it to this point where we look at how important our legacy as Native men are, not only for ourselves, but again for our sons, for our future generations, right? That's what we need to kind of move towards. That's where we need to, like, you know, align our, you know, kind of our intentions. Is, you know, what is that legacy going to be? You know, and hopefully it's one of all those things, you know, that are gonna, you know, help us recover, help us heal, help us, you know, be restored to, again, the men that and you know, that we were intended to be, that Creator intended us to be, you know. And so I wanted to share this idea, you know, and this photo, of course, is really dear to me. This is a photo of my great grandfather, Thomas Mitchell. Yeah, he was from the Abemapo Pomo of Lake County. So I didn't give that name to you, Joy, because, you know, but you did a good job of Big Valley Pomo. And so, you know, this is actually a painting of my grandfather, and it's at the Grace Hudson Museum in Ukiah. And when I first saw that painting a few years ago, it just like brought me to emotion. I was just like, I was in tears, you know, because I didn't expect, you know, to see it, you know, and I only had heard about grandfather, and then, you know, I just, like, again, it brought me to emotion, and, you know, I thanked him, and it's like that's why I'm a traditional dancer, you know. That's why my culture is so important, you know, and there's that connection, and that there's that I'm honoring grandfather's legacy too, by being on this path and by helping, you know, again, our people, you know, our men and our young boys, you know, to you know, recognize, you know, how valuable they are, how worthy they are, you know, and how important, and that they, you know, hopefully move towards, and again, you know, acknowledging what their purposes are, you know. And when I say that, you know, like, especially with young people, you know, they ask me, you know, well, Dean, how will I know what my purpose is? You know, how will I know? So my response to that is, you're going to find out when you find out what your purpose is. Then you're going to stop looking. You're going to stop questioning, because you'll know. You will know. Okay. So again, I think I want to, speaking of culture too, I think tomorrow, what I want to include, I want to cover a lot more on, again, you know, what are the ways, you know, the approaches that we use, you know, for healing and recovery, you know, and culture is a big part of it. So I'll have some more information about that. So if you guys want to join us tomorrow, I welcome you back, you know. And again, I don't know if there's another slide, if that's And again, why we do what we do. And again, it's again restoring balance in all things. You know, after what, you know, again, kind of acknowledging, you know, where we've been, remembering what was, what is, and what should be. You know, and this right here is so powerful because it's reflective of, again, when I asked that first question, who are you, why are you, and where are you going, right? It's kind of aligns with that thought, you know. And this was this was shared by a couple of relatives. And, you know, people, you know, non-native people, when they see this, you know, a lot of times they'll get stuck on the verb tense in this sentence, you know. But really, this is a prayer. This is a prayer on, you know, again, how we should be, what should be, you know, what our space should be, you know, in so much as, you know, having those things that help us, you know, come back to, you know, healthy, thriving, you know, family and community. So I think that's everything I have for today. Joy, I don't know if there's any questions. But I want to thank you again for helping me. And
No, thank you, Dean. That was a great presentation. If anyone has any questions, we have time. If you have time, I'm going to take everyone off mute. It's going to take me
okay.
just a quick second. Let's see. And I'm just starting at the top and working my way down. So
Hang on. Yeah, she just done.
okay, there's a few of you unmuted right now if you want to ask a question.
Now I'm unmuted again.
Anyone?
Joy, I have a question for you, but that's afterwards.
Okay. Okay. I can stay on. Okay, so what we do also is we give everybody an opportunity with a recording turned off. So
Okay.
if we don't have any questions just yet, I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off, and we'll see if we have anyone